Welcome to the KYC podcast, where we keep you connected to the latest in structured cabling, network innovations, and cutting edge technology. Brought to you by Cable and Connections, your trusted low voltage distributor since 1997. And today we are joined by some wonderful people from Blaze Audio. How are you guys doing today?
Doing terrific.
Doing great.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. And I know you guys aren't just a new product line for us in general, but you're actually fairly new to the US market as well. Can you give us a little bit of background on who Blaze is?
We come from a lineage of a company in Denmark that is really known for manufacturing design engineering for amplifier modules for a ton of different companies, about 80% of the pro audio world. And about, I guess, was it 5 years ago, Rob? I think the mind started.
Yeah, it was at the height of COVID.
Yeah, they decided that maybe not just OEMing, that we should actually create our own brand. And from there, Blaze was born. And a lot of people have asked what Blaze means. And there was a scientist back in the 1600s named Blaise Pascal. And of course, Pascal being the owner, the owner of the company Blaze is just a, kind of a play on that together. So here we are, 3 years later since the inception of the brand, and we're in about 60 countries. So we're moving right along.
Okay. Yeah, because you cut out there in the beginning. I was going to ask you who's the parent company of Blaze, and then you said Pascal. So that pretty much covered what I was going to ask you.
Touchdown.
But right. So, and this may have been answered in your little intro there, but what inspired you guys to enter the audio space in America?
You want me to take that, Rick? Or
Yeah, go ahead.
It's up to you. Okay, I think what it came down to is essentially they saw greener pastures in the U.S. market. I think the U.S. market is actually, the gold or the brass ring for most European countries. It's like you can be successful in Europe or in the Pan-Asian market, but really the true test of success is in the U.S. market, and that's also going to be predominantly the bigger market as far as penetration, as far as obviously profit and potential that way. So it's like, going to Broadway or LA. If you can make it on Broadway, you can make it anywhere. So I think they were inspired to come to the US market because it does give a sense of legitimacy in the marketplace. And they also saw that there was possibly a void in the commercial 70-volt space because candidly, Pascal is bigger in the production market in the European side of things. Rick alluded to power modules for powered speakers and making the actual chassis. They make chassis for 22, 23 different partners of the three-lettered vernacular, if you will.
Right.
But in this country, I mean, I think they saw an opportunity to be able to, dare I say, exploit or go in as a product solution provider in that commercial 70-volt space. So I think that's where the inspiration was came from.
Okay. And it's interesting that I never thought of it that way, how companies will be really successful overseas, and then the true testament is, can we be successful in the US? So for you guys, do you feel like in the past 5 years since you've come to market here, do you see the success that you wanted to see, or has it been far beyond what you expected?
I think it's been really successful. I think the U.S. has such a cross section of markets, as opposed to Europe. They don't have the mega church market, and they don't have the club venues and that sort of thing that we do here. So I think it made total sense to branch out and to come into the States, because we do it all, man. Rock concerts, rock church, we do everything. So I think it's been successful, but I also think it's a pretty crowded market, so it takes a little longer to really take hold, and we're just kind of in the middle of that process,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because you've got integrators and installers and contractors who have been using other brands their entire career, and then here you guys come along. What would set you guys apart from the competition to make someone want to make that switch?
Well, I guess I'll field that one. I think what it comes down to is, and as Rick mentioned from the get-go, is the lineage. The fact that our parent company is Pascal, They've been around since 2006, and they have a pedigree. They're basically a company that makes very reliable, very trustworthy amplifiers. Meantime failure rates are minimal, if anything. And they already have acquired partnerships with a lot of the big players that are out there. And I think coming on board, having the ability to be able to manufacture and not have to have somebody OEM your product, if you will, or ODM your product, as well as having the ability to work or play nice with third-party providers, API, for instance, and or have the speaker presets on your website, because basically they work. And we're not just a manufacturer of amplifiers, but we also make speakers as well. And having those partnerships in place, we do play nicely with third-party providers. So it's a great assimilation for us to be able to kind of hit the ground running. And to Rick's point, I mean, we've had successes in this marketplace, but albeit it is a crowded field. So we are in our infancy. So when it comes down to it, we're 5 years in the making, and we are going up against companies that have decades ahead of us and have acquired, the goodwill of their integrators and the consultant base and distribution, et cetera. And, that's probably the big hill that we need to climb on. But all things being said, within 5 years, we've made incredible strides, more so than a lot of companies coming out of the gates like this. So, to basically answer your question, what differentiates us, it's probably our product, the quality of the product, the identifiability of the product out in the field already, and the fact that we do have that lineage or legacy of Pascal behind us.
Okay.
So
now I know you guys are mainly commercial audio. Do you have a market in the foreseeable future for residential audio, surround sound systems, that kind of thing? Or are you strictly staying in the commercial audio zone?
I'll take that. Obviously our products, amplifiers mainly, and some of the speaker product could lend itself to a residential side. I don't think that's going to be something that we will pursue as part of the market plan, but it creeps into that for sure, because just by the nature of what the amps and some of the speakers in our line can function as residential product. So and that's another crowded market.
Right. Now, how long have each of you been in the market itself? Prior to Blaze, for the past 5 years. Before that, how long were you guys in the market?
Oh man,
before when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, Rick's probably got me by a couple years, but I'm embarking on my 30th year in this industry. So don't be fooled by my boyish good looks. But
well, I'll give you an idea. I was an installer. Well, I worked for a music store in 1990, and part of that was doing some install stuff. And then I went into the contracting side in 92 and started working for Florida Audio Video out of Oklahoma City, which is one of the larger integrators in the country. So it's been 30. So you guys are 38 years, 35 years.
Okay, so you guys are probably familiar with Muzak.
I think so.
Back in the day, in the elevator music.
That's a nice segue, because I actually did work for Muzak. I was an account executive. That was my overture into the world of AV back in the mid 90s. I worked for Muzak for several years, and beyond that, I've worked for multiple rep firms, as Rick has as well. So we actually have a shared commonality as far as our experiences. I also have worked as an integrator, working for an independent integrator beyond Muzak, and then also worked for TOA Electronics. So I was a regional for that company for several years. And then previous to Blaze, right before that, I worked in distribution. I worked for a company called ADI, which you're probably familiar with, which is probably an indirect competitor to you folks. So I like to tell people I've done everything but be a consultant in this industry. So it does give you kind of a well-rounded perception of things work. And, not to speak on behalf of Rick, but, one of the commonalities, like I said, or the thing that draws us together is our shared experiences working as independent reps. because I think
Right.
that's truly one of the most challenging areas in our industry or in any industry, to be
Mhm.
boots on the ground and working as an independent rep for said vendor.
Right.
So that gives you really an eye-opening experience into how, the process works.
Right.
And
So, since you guys have been in the industry so long, you've probably seen it change from what it was 30 years ago to what it's grown into and how everything is going. You've got IP-based audio systems now. So how have you seen the audio industry change over the last 10 years or so?
Oh, wow. In 10 years, I think the 20-year stretch is really the most impactful to me based
Okay.
upon it just became an IT mix of, it's not just amps, crossovers, and speakers and stuff. Now you're connecting into networks and you're doing things at high channel counts over a piece of Cat 5. It's just, it's mind blowing. I remember back in the day when I was working in businesses where I had 6 or 8 amp racks with 1,200 pounds of amplifiers inside of those, and those were all
Right.
2-channel amplifiers with toroidal chokes, and they required heavy duty wattage and amperage just to run them. And now you can plug in an 8-channel amplifier and get thousands of watts of output per
Yeah.
channel in a 2U chassis. So yeah,
Right.
smaller, better. I mean, it's unbelievable what's gone on in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, the shift from the traditional analog systems to, like you said, that digital and networked audio where you can get multi-channels in a 2U amplifier unit.
Oh
So,
yeah, it's insane. Class D. It's let's just say those words, Class D.
right.
Yeah,
Ha-
from my vantage point, I think the biggest impact, probably to Rick's point, it can't just be 10 years, but 20 years kind of gives you the 30,000 foot view of how
right.
things work. But I think Dante has probably been or Audinate, that company in general, has been the
Right.
biggest game changer for us, because to Rick's point, that has now given us the handshake with the IT world, whereas in the past you would bring in your product and the average IT guy would say, "Get that away from me. What is that? How does that connect? I don't
Right.
understand that." So Audinate or Dante has seamlessly made that interface happen, so that it's drawn AV into the world of IT, into data centers, into structured cabling, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
it's not just been like, okay, we're going to pigeonhole AV and this is the way it is, and then we'll get to you at some other point in time. Now it just complements the entire solution. And to Rick's point, everything has become more streamlined. So we have Dante enabled amplifiers, for instance. So instead of running, a boatload of cable and doing these home runs back and forth, you can just kind of put together your system and do it rather effortlessly, as opposed to all the man hours and the time and the labor that's involved in it, and the intent, and having stage boxes everywhere, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, it's really been revolutionary from that vantage point. DSP, digital signal processing, as well. I mean, we have a GUI. I'll make a shameless plug for our product. Our GUI is very intuitive, to the point that an end user could pick up and put together a multi-zone system in minutes.
Right.
So our motto is connect, configure, control. And so we don't want to light a cigarette with a flamethrower. We want to keep it very simplistic,
Right.
but still sophisticated. You have a lot of power in the GUI, but we make it easy so that it's user friendly, not just from the integrator vantage point, but also the end user vantage point.
Okay. Now I heard you throw around the term Dante enabled. For our listeners who may not know what that means, can you explain what Dante enabled means?
I'll defer to Rick on that if he wants, because I don't want to monopolize all the
Dante,
time here.
it's a digital protocol that enables you to send multiple channels basically down, simple as Cat 5, as opposed, let's say you've got Dante wireless mics. You might have 12 mics, and if they're Dante, you're not running 12 separate analog outputs into 12 separate channels on a console. They're coming in digitally. So, and that can be done with multiple types of I/O devices, input output devices, and communicate. So just a digital way to use and do input signals and output signals.
Okay. Okay. Well, that dumbed it down enough for me because I appreciate
I'm
it.
pretty good at being
Uh,
dumb.
so, so for you guys, your Dante-enabled devices seem to sell a lot more than the 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 other. What would you call the non-Dante-enabled devices?
Well, like an analog,
Okay.
the dumb amps where they got knobbies on the front and dip switches on the back, and then the step up from that is your DSP or your
Okay.
digital signal processor amplifiers.
And you would say that your Dante-enabled devices are selling more than the other ones.
Actually, I would say no, and the only reason, and I think Rick can back me up on this, is it's a timing issue because we introduced our amplifiers, our Dante-enabled amplifiers, at a time when we thought that there was actually a shortage. There was a chip shortage worldwide for the product, and then we developed an amplifier to fill a void. And by the time our amp came to market, the chip shortage was taken care of. So basically, people just reverted back to their time true products that are out there or their competitive products. So it's been kind of slow from that vantage point because Rick has mentioned this. It's a crowded field out there.
Right.
But I think it's essential that you do have a product out there, that product offering, because invariably somebody's going to say, well, when are you getting your Dante-enabled amplifiers? It's like, I have them right here. I'm ready to sell them to you. Yeah, maybe not right now, but we'll get back to you. So it's like...
Well, and you know another thing, Rob, is our highest selling amplifier is typically something that goes into maybe a restaurant or as something as simple as a school cafeteria or whatever. And most of those things, there's not really a whole lot of Dante going on at that point. So that affects it. But like Rob said, I mean, we definitely kind of came in just a tad bit late when everybody else was running low on Dante.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said you came in peak COVID into the U.S. market, so it was probably hard because around that time everybody was struggling. You had people getting sick, but you also had shortages in almost every market you could think of. So getting people to focus on your brand during that time was probably a struggle in itself, along with the shortages. So I can see where most people would come to the U.S. market and say, "We came at the wrong time. Let's get out of here. You guys stuck it through and have turned into what you are today and expanding distribution." But on that note, do you guys have a team of people that are always innovating your products, product development and innovation, and anything like that?
Yeah, that actually emanates from Denmark because Pascal is based in outside of Copenhagen, and that's where their brain trust is as far as their engineering team.
Okay.
So no engineering is done in this country. It's all emanates from there. So it trickles down from there. I almost think of it like the military. They develop like this sophisticated technology and then eventually gets into the hands of the consumer at some point in time. So when we envision and we see something happening in Denmark, we get kind of excited because we're like, oh boy, it's going to be new amp technology, and eventually it's going to trickle down to us. But we know that they're going to take precedent, obviously, over us when it comes to that. Entering the market at the height of COVID, it was a challenge. I mean, I think, truthfully, I think that they were looking to develop this because they basically, you're kind of sitting around twiddling your thumbs, and it's like, okay, what do we do now? At this particular juncture, we have all these engineers. We want to keep them gainfully employed. What should we do now? And I think from that, evolves the different ideas to do different things. I think that people, and I think it creates inspiration. And I think that, at that point you've created something, and then this entity kind of has a life of its own, and then it goes out, and here we are 5 years later, and it's like, okay, we're along for the ride here. And, but yeah, to your point, all the manufacturing, or the engineering itself, the hive, if you will, is across the pond.
Okay, but you guys do have a U.S. office right outside Philadelphia, I believe, right? Okay. And that's a
Correct.
showroom,
Yep.
and sales office? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
we
I've got
also have a warehouse based in Wisconsin as well. So
okay.
we're predominantly Midwest, East Coast with all of
Okay.
our operations. So if you're an integrator or much like Cable and Connections, we're kind of in the sweet spot of where you do business as well. So it's rather
Yeah.
advantageous from that vantage point.
Okay. And I was gonna ask you what's the biggest challenge you guys have faced since coming into the commercial audio market in the United States, but I think COVID would be the number one answer of the biggest challenge or the biggest hurdle you guys have faced. Is that correct?
We weren't really doing anything during COVID, more or less. I think
Okay.
a lot of the development and the initial phases of things were during COVID. I think the challenge on my end, and it's funny how different each territory is in the U.S. You know, you'll go one part of the country and there's no church market, and you go to the other part of the country and it's a good 90% or 80% of what the market is. I think the hard
Right.
part is to really to come in with the right products to compete against some of the other companies out there that have been around for so long. That's the big hurdle for me.
Right. Yeah. I to me, when I picture smaller companies trying to compete with the big boys that have been around for decades, is you got this kindergartner in a crowd of grown adults, but he's got this really cool, innovative idea in his hand. And he's trying to jump over him, like, "Hey, look at me! Hey, look at me! Look, I'm right here! Look at me!"
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, and
kind
then
of what I picture in my head.
that kindergartner gets smacked in the head every day and told to go away.
All those grown adults are like, "Get away from me!" He's
Mhm.
smacking him in the head. Yeah.
Yeah, and some
Yeah,
of the
we're also
companies that
up
have been
against. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to say a lot
Go
of the
ahead.
companies have been around for so long. They've gone through so many trends and so many cycles of they were the thing 50 years ago, and then they were the thing again 30 years ago, and then they weren't the thing 20 years
Right.
ago. And it's funny.
Right.
And Rob and I know because we actually represented one of those companies that all I heard for the first 3 years representing that line was, "Boy, you guys used to be good back in the day," you know. And it's like, what about
Right.
today?
Yeah, we're still good.
You know, it's just
Yeah,
shifts
that
and cycles, you know.
it's funny. Yeah,
Right.
that's the refrain. Boy, you should have been here 10 years ago. You join a company and it's like, boy, wow, the heyday was something else. And I'm like, so I guess we're at the tail end of this situation. But, to Rick's point, there are ebbs and flows within the marketplace. So what's hot
Right.
now won't necessarily be hot in 5 or 10 years from a vendor standpoint. And then, like a company like Blaze, a young upstart, is on the rise. It's on the ascent. And we to again to Rick's point, every market is different. The Northeast is not going to certainly be like the Southeast. I mean, a lot of my business is going to be either K through 12. It's going to be consultant driven. It's going to be retail. It's going to be what I call audio by the acre. You
Mhm.
mentioned Muzak. It's going to be business music types of applications.
Right.
And then we have a colleague in the central part of the country. He's doing more production type stuff, but he's also doing the mega church markets.
Right.
So we all have our separate challenges, and I feel like our product line does have offerings that can basically appeal to those different marketplaces. But when it all comes down to it, aside from the hardware and the technology and the software, etc., it really comes down to human nature and psychology. Because a lot of the people that are buying products right now, the integrators that are out there and the
Mhm.
consultants who are speccing the products, they become so heavily invested in a product offering that they decide this is it. And human nature is I don't want to deviate from this. Change is
Right.
bad. Change is
Yep.
uncomfortable. I'm going to
Yep.
stick right in my happy little zone here. This is my little cocoon, my little den. And this is the product that I'm going to go with. And they will tolerate that entity making flubs, mistakes, what have you, and continuously going back to them. Occasionally you'll have people who go, I'm at my wit's end. What can you do for me? And that's been kind of a
Right.
marketplace for us. We're at the tail end of COVID where we're still dealing with the backlog issues. And we were able to exploit that type of situation because we typically have product in stock. Meantime failure rates are low. Product is in stock. We have a 5-year warranty, including advanced replacement. Here I am. I'm promoting the product and selling it. That's what I do. I'm a salesman.
Well, that's the point of the podcast, is to get your name out there and
Right.
talk with our listeners and our customers. So go
I
ahead.
mean, yeah, to make it abundantly clear, that's what we do. I mean, we have the product the right time with the product. And again, you're knocking on doors. I just had somebody, as a matter of fact, call me yesterday and said, okay, you've worn me down. Okay, I'm going to buy your product now. And I started on this guy from the get-go. So it's almost 2 years I've been at the company. So you have to have this almost unbreakable, unguided vision and focus on being able to constantly reinforce, be that kindergartner saying, hey, look at me.
Right.
And instead of getting smacked in the head, like Rick said, finally they look and they say, hey, wait, he might actually have something here that we could use.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned that people, they stick with a brand through almost everything. And I feel like the older you get, the stronger that mentality becomes, because you have these older people who are Chevy versus Ford type of scenario, where they'll never drive anything except a Chevy. They'll never install anything except a Blaze Audio piece of equipment. So you have those tried and true people that the older they get, the harder it is to get them to switch away from something. So
yeah,
I found
that's part of the challenge for us, is to come in and change some of that habitual behavior.
Right. Yeah.
We are a such and such house. You hear that a lot in this industry, or you hear from people that, oh, that's all they use is so and so product, and a lot of those things you're never going to change. It's just their nature, which is fine, and you're not going to win every game, but got to try.
Right. Yeah. So switching gears here for a second, I want to know what your guys' favorite product offering is out of everything that you guys have. What would be your favorite thing that you like to show people?
We're probably going to say the same thing.
Okay. Say it at the same time. Buy you a Coke.
528.
528. That's our,
Which is what was the 528?
That is our kind of our Swiss Army knife speaker. It's a 4 or 5 inch low frequency drivers in the horizontal plane, and then it's 8 2-inch drivers in the vertical. And the cool thing about this speaker, it's kind of a bizarro speaker in the fact that the dispersion characteristics are really what differentiate it. It's 180 degrees wide by 45 high. So it's basically multifaceted. You can put it in, a gymatorium. You could put it in a small performing arts center, small or medium house of worship, and it's going to cover a lot of real estate. Also, it's got 2 pole mounts on the bottom. It's got points on the top. It will actually employ a CMA 395 from Chief. So you could use it as a monitor. You could use it on the monitor on a floor. So there's a lot of versatility to the product.
Okay.
And it sounds fantastic. I think Rick can attest to that.
We can tell you all the nuts and bolts, but the real secret to it is it's a bi-amped box, so it requires 2 channels of audio, but it's sonically it's extremely good. It's a great sounding speaker product, and that's why I like it. I mean, aside from the fact that it's a little tiny speaker. When I first got my samples in a couple of years ago, I thought, oh, okay, this is not okay. This little speaker, whatever. But everybody that hears it, you're going to sell them. If somebody hears it, you're going to sell them. That's all you have to say.
Yeah.
Right. So, opposite sides of the spectrum here. What is on one side of it, what is the most unexpected or unique place that you guys have seen your equipment installed in? And on the other side, what is the most notable venue that you've seen your equipment installed in?
For me, I just had a fairly new partner of ours over in the Mississippi market. He installed some of the 528s that we were just talking about. It's actually a CBL 528. It's a constant beam width loudspeakers, what that stands for. He installed those into a giant hangar where the people that do the floats for Mardi Gras in New Orleans, that's where they build them. And they wanted yeah, it's cool. So they wanted a background music thing, so when they're all in there working, they could, because New Orleans is party central. Yesterday was Ash
Right.
Wednesday,
I've heard that. I've never been, but I've heard that.
and so they wanted some good sounding stuff, and I went over and checked it out, and fit the bill. It was awesome, and it was really an unusual venue, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay. Okay. And what about you, Rob?
I actually had a gentleman, and this kind of transcends the whole commercial and goes into a residential arena. I had an integrator who was dealing with a gentleman who had a business and said, by the by, can you do something for my home? And he reached out to me and he said, this guy has a rare car collection. And he has one of those garages where it's on multi-tiers, it's on these pistons, and the cars go up multiple levels.
Right, yeah.
So he needed wide coverage for this big box, basically, that was full of all these vintage cars. And we were able to hang from the ceiling two facing each side that would cover the entire area, listening area, if you will. So he wanted something sonically that was going to, kick. Give him, the guy's also an audiophile, not just a rare car junkie. So he wanted something that sounded really good in that environment. It's a spacious, cavernous environment. So obviously there was going to be some challenges with that as well. But thank God for DSP and notch filtering. We were able to do something, and it sounded fantastic. And so, that was, again, that's unusual for me because it did transcend the commercial side, and it went to the resi side as well. So our product does lend itself to it because it does have a sleek look to it. Our wall controllers could operate both in a commercial or residential environment just because of the aesthetics of it. And the speakers themselves are beautifully crafted. They're 12 millimeter Baltic birch, and they really have kind of a distinct look to them. Dare I say, a sexy look to them. And
there's one right behind over your shoulder there.
Yeah, I don't know if you can actually see it from here. I guess I would have to tilt.
I could see it.
There you go. Can you see it right there?
Yep.
There
you go. Yeah, I always try to put that in when somebody sees it so they know that I'm actually legitimate. I actually do the sell abroad.
That is the CBL 528. And we do, by the way, we do stock those in black and white.
Okay.
And they are paintable as well. So
that's good to know.
Yeah.
So we talked about the most unexpected or unique place. Is there like a notable venue, like a stadium or like the new Sphere in Las Vegas, anything like that where your guys' speakers have been installed?
Not in the
that
Sphere.
You know of or that you can share?
Something notable. Well, we are working on a project right now. It's coming to fruition right now. I don't know, Rick, if I can actually name what it is. It's a stadium. It's a small stadium for a small, historically black college.
Okay.
In Texas.
Okay.
And so we're waiting on the PO to come through right now. We've gotten a verbal agreement on it. It hasn't been installed yet, though.
Okay.
For actually established jobs, we have multiple church jobs or house of worship jobs in the Southeast area, predominantly in Rick's territory. Reimagine Church is one of those. Rick, what was the other church that was in your territory?
There's Reimage, and then there's if you would have asked me that 2 minutes ago, there's several, and those are using the CCA 10, which is a dual 10 constant curvature array, which is a lot bigger than the little 528s, and it's more of a line array, but it's constant curvature. It's 20 degrees by 160. So if you stack up four of them, you got an 80 vertical by 160 horizontal, and those are used for church application, theater application. But I would probably say for me the most noteworthy of the installs down here would probably be Reimage Church for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how do you guys work with integrators to create a seamless audio experience for the end user?
I think it starts at the design level. So I think what makes the experience notable is the fact that we do have a gentleman by the name of John Taylor who's dedicated strictly to design work, ease drawings. All our design work is free of charge. So basically, we work with the integrator. They bring a design to us. We don't sell directly to the end user, so they act as the buffer. So we're working strictly through the integrator or the consultancy. They'll bring something to us. We'll put it in ease. We'll design the job for them. Again, we don't charge them. We will handhold them and help work through the process. They, in turn, will bring that to the end user. If they need us to be on site, we can actually go in there. We can actually help with the installation and do the programming of said job. So a lot of it comes down to being very hands-on. One of the things of note with one of my dealers, this was a gentleman that was kind of maybe what you would call a mom and pop type of operation. And, he's doing business or background music. And I met him at Infocom last year. He just wandered into the booth and we just got to talking and we hit it off. And then he came back and he really wanted to kind of drill down deep into the product. And John was on the phone with him for the better part of 90 minutes. And this gentleman remarked at the end of the meeting, he goes, well, if I was on the phone with so-and-so, they wouldn't give me the time of day. And he goes, well, that's what differentiates us. He goes, you can call me at any time. And I liken John to like almost being like a vampire. I've gotten texts from him at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So I don't think the man sleeps. And so he's really kind of our secret weapon when it comes to, giving that type of user-friendly, if you will, or white glove service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that differentiates us from, say, a big box house where, they're typically looking at somebody, if you're doing a minimum of at least $100,000 a year, they'll give you the time of day. But if you're kind of a mom and pop or a onesie and twosie, they're not necessarily going to give you that type of attention, if you will.
Right. So where do you guys see the industry going in 5, 10, 25 years from now? Where do you see not only Blaze going, but the industry as a whole? Do you see more IP configured devices, or do you think analog will phase out? Or where do you see the industry heading?
I don't think it's going to go any other direction. I mean, I think the IT side of it and being able to do things, that direction is the way it's going to be. I'm seeing a lot more immersive stuff, as far as production and even in live venues. That's a really big part of where all the large, big companies are headed. I don't necessarily think that's going to be something we will be doing, but I think in the next 10 years, everything's going to be immersive. Everything's going to have, there's going to be a sphere on every corner.
Yeah.
Even though those only cost I think they only cost like what, $3 or $4 billion to build those things, so they're pretty affordable.
I don't see how that's not a distraction to people driving through Vegas. I don't see how that's not a visual distraction when you've got this giant eyeball flipping or whoever, whatever ads flashing on it. To me, that would be more of a distraction than anything. But
Vegas is a distraction, so it really blends into the overall mix.
Right. They say you can see the sphere when you fly over Vegas. You can actually see it.
Yeah.
So
actually, I flew out last year when we were leaving Vegas for Infocom. I flew over and Dead and Company was playing, and the Grateful Dead logo, I could see it from the plane really clear. I mean, it's crystal clear.
Right.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I can see why they did it. It's definitely a big marketing ploy for the city. Now, you mentioned immersive audio. What are your thoughts on immersive audio versus spatial versus AV over IP?
Well, immersive and spatial are kind of one of the same thing, basically, almost I actually heard a really cool venue a while back where they could replicate with the immersiveness. They could make it sound like you're in a giant arena, or they could make it sound like you were in a smaller space, basically just using some reverb that would make you feel like you're in a giant, concert hall.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the limitations to that, like in production world, all of a sudden, you're not just flying some left and right hangs. Now you're having to have towers for rears and, front, center, side, all that. So it's a lot more expensive to do immersive stuff in the production world. And I don't think it's,
Right.
or in general, I think even in a theater or whatever, it's obviously going to be more money. But
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned Vegas, you mentioned the Sphere, but when you think of immersive, at least in my mind, I think of the Love Show at the Mirage, the Beatles tribute show, because that was probably one of the first instances where they utilized immersive sound, where they literally had speakers under the seats so you could feel the rumble, and
Right.
that seemed to be the one that was the telltale impactful experience for a lot of people. And to Rick's point, spatial and immersive are kind of one and the same. You mentioned IP over AV. That's becoming more prevalent, but I think that it's still too cost constrictive at this point. The
Right.
speakers that we're seeing coming out right now are still stupidly expensive. I've seen speakers that are $800 to $1,000 a piece. So until that comes down in price, much like the amplifier technology, where you'll have those big toroidal amplifiers and you bring it down into a smaller space and you can make it more cost effective. I don't think it's going to be the thing that's going to, be redefining at this point. I think it's just part and complements what's going on. I think over COVID, there were instances where IP became favorable because people couldn't run cable, or if you have a historical building or something of that nature and you don't want to rip up the walls. But again, you've got to make a fair monetary commitment to it. Same with immersive, and it's costly. So until the cost and the price performance ratio kind of come in hand with each other,
Right.
these are going to be. They're going to be accessory type items to the main. I don't believe that we're going to see a lot of more innovation at this point. I think we're going to stick with the try but true, because people still have to make money on jobs, and they want to churn and burn. They want to be able to get in, do a job,
Absolutely.
get out, move on to the next job.
Yeah.
And the immersive thing
time is money in that instance. Yeah.
You're going to see esoteric types of applications for these types of jobs, but it's not going to become the preeminent or the overriding type of technology that's going to permeate the air. It's just not at this point.
Okay. Well, let me change directions one more time here. Cable and Connections is going to a trade show in April called Tech Fest. It's going to be the 3rd annual one. We support it every single year. But from the standpoint of Blaze Audio, what is your guys' favorite trade show to attend, or that you have attended so far?
Well, Infocom has typically been the largest, and I think we do several regional shows across the country, and some of those are beneficial. I think a lot of it just kind of depends on what's the new product and kind of what market that the trade show kind of focuses on. But Infocom by default, it's the largest show in the country, so that one is mainly the one that we focus on.
Yeah. How do you guys set up for an event of that size? Because you said it is usually the largest event, but set up, logistics, shipping stuff across the country, and kind of like your goals that you want to meet at these types of events.
Well, and to that point, I'm sorry.
No,
Rick.
I was just going to say, we have I would say a team, but it's actually really one guy named Eric Huber, and he is right now. He's probably working on something that's going to happen a year and a half from now. And he is really the machine, he's really the machine behind all of that. He gets all of that together. And for the last few years, we've been using Colorcraft out of Orlando. They've built the booths for us the last couple of years, which they've done a fantastic job. If they send you a 3D rendering, it's going to look exactly like it in person. So, and obviously, coming into a show like that, there's a ton of work. If there's a demo space that we need, it's just an all hands on deck kind of thing, and everybody has to be involved.
Right.
But
with an event that large, I feel like all hands on deck would definitely have to play into that. What goals do you guys set for yourself at events like that? Is there like, we need to talk to this many people, we need to get these many contacts? You know, is there some sort of goals you set for yourselves?
Mm, I, yeah, I don't. I think it's more organic than that with a vendor. When I worked in distribution, they were actually really pushing that, and it was almost like a clicker. Get all these people because then
Right.
they wanted to process the leads. It's not to say that we don't do lead generation, but I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that it's just a different dynamic. We're typically relying not just on people that know us directly, but our independent reps are very critical to the process. So they're typically bringing people buying a procession on an hour, half an hour, or an hourly basis. So, it just varies. I think a lot of it just comes down to you just try to get as many eyeballs in front of your product as possible. With trade shows, and again, I think Rick can attest to this, the best laid plans sometimes don't happen because you got somebody who's scheduled to come in at 2 and they don't come in at 2. So you're sitting there and you're waiting and your 3 o'clock comes in, and guess what? Your 2 shows up at the same time. So all of a sudden it becomes a group setting, and it's like you can't really give that one-on-one basis. Now it becomes a different dynamic altogether. So I think you have to pivot and you have to adapt and adjust to it. I think that you can set kind of tenuous goals as to, like, I hope that this person shows up at the show. I set the appointment and they're supposed to come to the booth, and you want to fill your dance card, but that's the extent of it. And then maybe you want to secure some sort of a deal, maybe with a distributor, or you might have a big integrator that you've been trying to covet or you've been trying to develop over time. But again, I don't think it's as organized as it used to be, at least from my vantage point working for a vendor. Again, if you're working on the independent rep side, I think that there are certain guidelines that you want to do. And when I worked in distribution, there most definitely were. It's like you got to pull people from out of the aisle and bring them into the booth type of thing.
Right.
I think the aesthetic is just a little bit different with the vendor side.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah, it's totally different. 20 years ago, you would actually write business. You'd actually sell at a
Right.
trade show. And now it's
Right.
it's really more of a show and tell. And I think a lot of people, here's my personal take. I think they put it in Vegas and they put it in Orlando, and it gives people way too many extracurricular options.
Yeah, we're a
Right.
byproduct of
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got the
I
guy
brought
that
my wife and kids to Disney, and I may
yeah,
go by the booth.
I've had guys literally walk in and say, I have 1 hour at this show. My wife and kids are at Animal Kingdom waiting on me. So give us
That's
the
funny.
nickel tour and we're gonna get out of here. And then Vegas,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like they never show up and you find out they were having a hot run at the craps table. So,
As an aside, I worked for a rep, and he will remain nameless, but I remember going out to what was it, Tony Roma's for ribs. I was out
Yeah.
I was out in Anaheim for NAM, and he literally sat at the dinner before the night before, and he looked at me and he said, "If you don't write at least $30,000 worth of business this week, don't bother coming back home." And I said, "Okay, so I guess I'm going to live in Anaheim then, the shadow
Right.
of Disneyland." So yeah, he would put the fear of God into you. But to Rick's point again, you were writing business at these shows, and it's evolved into something different. It's more about the interactions and the networking, and then building upon that, and then what's going to happen after the show, what's going to happen in
Right.
the next 3 to 6 weeks or 3 to 6 months or beyond. So
Right.
Yeah, and it's really hard to look at an ROI in a situation like that because you can't really measure it. Back in the day,
Mhm.
if you came home, if you worked for so and so guitars and you had 60 POs that came up to a total of $750,000, you had a successful show. And now you just have a whole bunch of names in a spreadsheet about a month later that comes in, and you kind of weigh it like that and hope that maybe out of those 300 people on that spreadsheet, you made somebody's some impact somewhere down the line. So they're a little
Right.
harder to gauge
Right.
whether they're a success or not.
Yeah, and I think that's what, because I mentioned TechFest briefly, I think that's what sets TechFest apart from normal trade shows. Is it's not your normal, you have 300 contacts and hope one of them sticks. It's 200, 300 industry experts and installers who are wanting to get hands-on with the product and get down and dirty and talk with the experts and sit in on the trainings and the certifications and learn as much as they can before they go home over the 2-day course of the event. It really gives our vendors a chance to sit down and get real world feedback from the installers, but also give the installers a chance to learn more about their product, sit down and say, well, how does this work? Why did you guys do this? Why is this different than this, this brand? So a lot of our vendors have walked away with more at TechFest than they do from, like, let's say a larger trade show, because of the value of the attendees, not the quantity of the attendees.
Oh, I could see that. I mean, I really could see
Yeah.
how less is more at that juncture. And also, give us a
Yeah.
shameless plug. Tell us what the dates are on this show, and
Yeah, it's April 23rd and 24th in Nashville, Tennessee. We spoke on it on the last episode of the podcast, so I didn't want to dive too much into it on this one, but it's but yeah, it's April 23rd, 24th, Nashville, Tennessee.
and
Stop on by and
I think we are considering doing that show. Is that right, Rob? I haven't really haven't
Yeah,
followed back
I
up with
think
that.
yeah, I'd spoken to the rep, and it was something that was definitely dance card viable, if you will.
Okay.
So we would be more than happy to engage on something
Okay.
like that. We have to be very selective with the regional shows that we do.
Right.
We want obviously to get the most bang for the buck.
Right.
So
Right.
but seeing that you guys have you put your money where your mouth is, as I can see product behind you.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
have actually bought product,
Yep.
which is refreshing because there are some people that don't buy anything. So I will definitely give more attention to somebody who's willing to work with me.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and to your point, in all seriousness, Theron, yeah, I mean, if it's more directed and it's not like you're just, putting a big, bit of stuff in there, but you're more selective in your approach to what you have for product, and you're more directed to what your marketplace is. I think that's going to make a big difference, than just kind of flailing out there and, spitballing or throwing stuff against a wall.
Right. And hoping it sticks.
What's the venue for that show? Where's the location for that?
It's the Gaylord, the Opryland Resort.
Oh,
yep.
We know that.
A lot of people know it. It was my first time going last year when they hosted it at the same venue. But it's humongous. It's a really nice venue.
Oh, Trevor, we've done a lot of stuff there. Matter of fact,
Rick, Rick, aren't you still there? Aren't you still, like, from the trade show 3 months ago? Aren't you still trying to make your way out of that venue?
I'm still trying to find a parking lot on the north side over there where I parked the car.
Yeah, that's right.
We used to do a ton of stuff there. I worked for a rep firm out of Nashville, so we did Gaylord, Opryland stuff all the time. We had meetings there. Cool. It's a cool spot. It's a good spot.
I mean, I think for someone in the audio realm, Nashville would be like the go-to place because that's literally Music City. Everyone's dealing with audio in that city.
They used to have NSCA there in the summer. I don't know if you remember that, when NSCA, they used to, that out of the ashes of that came Infocom. Infocom purchased or acquired NSCA. And so they used to compete against each other, and Infocom was the upstart. But at one point in time, they had NSCA in winter, and then they had a summer show. And for whatever reason, they decided to stick the summer show in Nashville.
Okay.
And needless to say, I don't think it went over like a lead balloon.
Right.
Because who's going to go to Nashville in July or August?
Yeah, it gets pretty hot. So we're gearing towards the end of the show here. I wanted to have some closing thoughts and some interactive stuff here towards the end of the show. Uh, where can people learn more about Blaze Audio, your products, and any upcoming events, anything like that? Where can people learn more about you guys?
Well, the website, that's a great resource, www.blaze-audio.com. There's a ton of information on there about all the products, everything that we manufacture. There's detailed installation manual software. There's actually a demo of the GUI, or for those who don't know what that means, the graphical user interface for the inside of our amps. So you can go there and actually do a demo of that without having one of our amps in front of you. What else, Rob? Trade shows?
Trade shows. We also have a social media presence. We're on LinkedIn. We just crossed a milestone, 6,000 followers. So in a very short period of time, that's fairly impressive. So we are really making the push of interacting via social media to get our message out, as you're prone to do as well. I'm sure this will end up on social media. I'll see my ugly mug out there.
Yeah, hopefully.
And it's like, make sure that small children and, animals are not present from my...
Right.
Yeah, another good resource is called John Taylor at 3 o'clock in the morning at 7:05.
He'll pick up.
He probably would pick up. Yeah.
It's funny because we have maybe 8 or 9 people in this country. We just project bigger than we are, but we're lean and mean as far as getting things done. So every individual it makes an impact on the business. We do have the support of Pascal in Denmark, and again, Blaze is worldwide. So we're in the EMEA, we're in the Pacific market. Obviously, we're in Latin America and North America. So we have distribution throughout, and we have independent reps akin to the U.S. market.
Okay.
So
now let's end the show on a final question here. What would be a dream venue that you'd want to see the Blaze Audio equipment installed in? Your dream venue for your guys' equipment.
Oh man, that's a tough one. Probably some kind of really historical Grand Ole Opry or something like that. A cool theater that that would be
right around the corner from Opryland.
Yeah.
Just make it easy.
Yeah.
Once Rick emerges from the building, you can just meander over there and check out his handiwork
and sell them some of your speakers.
I would say something like historical to that extent. Probably more modern day, like Madison Square Garden. Something
Square,
like
Madison
that,
Square
where
Garden,
you have the biggest names in entertainment come through, and they're playing through your system. I think that you can point to that with your companion and say, "See those speakers?
Yeah,
I'm responsible for that," and then they just kind of ignore you. But to the people in the know, that would be pretty impressive, I think.
Right. Yeah. For me, it would have. When you say historical, because I'm a history nerd, I think like 1800s. If I could see like a Blaze speaker installed in, Abraham Lincoln's cabin, and think how times have changed. It went from his mom yelling out the window for him to, an IP speaker installed in the kitchen.
I thought you were going to say,
would be pretty cool to see.
I thought you were going to say Ford Theater. Oh, is that too soon?
It's been a couple hundred years. I think
we're
all
right. I'd say overseas. I'd say the was it the O2 Arena in Wembley? I think that would be like awesome to be in something like that, just to have that electric atmosphere, something like an open air environment, and just having stacks and racks, and just having people just blown away by the sound and the experience. Music is such an emotional thing. It emotes so much, and people are just drawn to and sentimental based upon what they hear musically. So it does bring out various emotions in people.
Yeah, like
so
Slayer.
speakers are much different than amps,
Yeah. All righty, guys. Well, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast today.
No worries.
This will be
This
episode
was
2,
fun.
so I'm super excited to get you guys out there
Cool.
and show your brand to the world of cable and connections followers and customers. Hopefully, we can have a very long, robust relationship with you guys and sell a ton of amps and speakers to
Sounds
people
great.
who
Are you going to be at the Nashville Tech Fest?
I am, yeah. Me
Okay.
and Dave will be there.
Oh,
My
Dave.
wife
Yeah.
will also be there, so you'll get to meet my wife if you guys go.
Very nice.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, let me, I'll talk to Eric Huber, the
Mhm.
great, you know, our CX marketing manager extraordinaire, and
Mhm.
see what we can do to set something up April 23rd, 24th. I'll put that on my dance card.
Yeah, the exhibitor cutoff's coming up, but
Ooh,
I'll
okay.
send you.
Yeah, send me
I'll
that
send you guys.
info.
Yeah, I'll
Let
send
me
you the
know.
info again, and see if we can't work something out for you guys to attend this year. And
Sounds
it's
like
a
a
great show.
plan.
We love it. But like I said, I appreciate you guys hopping on the podcast today. It should go live next week, and I look
Great.
forward to talking to you guys again soon. You guys have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks, man.
Thanks,
Have a
Thad.
good day.
Nice meeting you.